Okay, one more episode about the International Conference on Mindfulness. And this one, we'll be learning a little bit more about how art can be influenced by mindfulness. Hello, and welcome to Mindfulness Voyage. My name is Ted Meissner. Thank you so much for being here today. And in our probably final episode, where we'll be talking about the International Conference of Mindfulness that's coming up, we're going to talk with two people who are going to have art exhibits at the conference. And the reason we're doing that is that, well, if you've been here before, you know that mindfulness is something that can be a part of all aspects of your life. It's not just about formal time on the cushion. So let's talk to our guests and learn a little bit more about art and mindfulness.
Our guests today are Anne SPECKENS. Anne, thank you so much for being here. Good to see you.
And you. Thanks for being here as well.
And returning to, my podcast series, Stephen BATCHELOR. Stephen, thank you so much for being here and good to see you again.
Thank you, Ted. No, it's great to be with you.
And today our topic is going to be a little bit different than what I may be speaking with either of you about. What I typically speak with you about our interests in health and wellness and well-being and mental health and secular Dharma and all the rest of that. Today we're going to be speaking about art, because each of you is going to be sharing your artwork at the upcoming International Conference on Mindfulness. So I first want to thank Rachel Smith from the Mindfulness Network for coordinating this interview. Rachel, thank you again so much for all of your efforts on having these conversations. And I'm just wondering, I want to ask each of you, maybe Anne, if we could start with you, how did it come about, you bringing your art to the conference? How did that first come up as a possibility?
Well, it might actually have been an idea of both of us, Stephen and I, talking, and Rebecca Crane was very interested in getting the art there. And I think it might have been during the teacher training program that we participated, Rebecca and I participated in from Bodhi College, that we talked about it and got the idea.
Wonderful. And Stephen, how about for you? When did you first get roped into this?
I think I actually have the same recollection as Anne. I believe we started sort of what's the word? We started mooting the idea. Is that the right word? We started sort of discussing the possibility at Bodhi College program that Rebecca and Anne and myself were involved in. But I think it also came up because I had actually just had my first show of work. Oh no, wait a minute, I'm sorry, I'm getting all muddled. I actually can't remember the timeline, but a year or so ago, in fact, almost exactly a year ago, I showed my work for the first time. And this is somehow connected with my willingness to actually let others see this work, rather than it being really a very private, personal practice that I've been doing for many years, but have felt very, very reluctant to go out and put this stuff on show. So I think it was the prompting of Anne and Rebecca that also sort of gave me a nudge to actually go ahead and do this.
And it's interesting to see. Oh, go ahead, Anne, please.
It might have also to do with when we organized the International Conference of Mindfulness in Amsterdam. It's already 2018, 6 years ago now. Mm-hmm. We really included art in the conference as well. So not on music, dance, film, whatever, because it was a very nice means of demonstrating the nature of mindfulness, that it's not only about science and even not only about practice, that art might be part of the practice, and people really appreciated that. So yeah, that was what Rebecca might have remembered as well.
And I wonder if you might continue on with this theme, this idea that I keep sharing on the podcast, that mindfulness is more than just I'm going to feel calm and light and joyful. There's a lot of other stuff there, but including art. I'm wondering if you might tell us a little bit about that intersection of art and mindfulness, and And a very open-ended question, tell us about your art.
So who's first? Stephen, you or?
Why don't you go ahead, Anne?
I think art is very important. I'm in Venice now at the Biennale, so it's a celebration of art from all over the world by people who haven't been well represented in art before, and is so touching. So it's a way of communicating between human beings that really touches the core of our being, our whatever you want to express, our fragility, impermanence, vulnerability, joy. So and you can't make or even, I think, receive art without being present, without being mindful. So there's a very strong connection in my view and also in my experience about between art and mindfulness. And my own art, well, I have only re-engaged with making art since 2 or 3 years now, actually attending art college. So I'm a beginner, but that's also a quality of mindfulness, being a beginner. And yeah, it's about being open-minded, being receptive, noticing things, being open to the association of things that might not be the usual automatic associations, seeing what is evolving, developing, not having an aim to strive for, but looking what's becoming. Yeah, and it's, I think, also selfless in a way. In that way, sort of getting out of the way of the process of things developing.
Thank you, Anne. And Stephen, I know we had discussed this several years ago that you were turning towards art in your personal life, and a bit of a shift now to share this in the past year and having a show. Tell us a little bit about your art.
Well, I grew up in a family that always had a kind of a sensitivity and an encouragement to engage in art. And my mother was frustrated as a young woman in not being able to pursue her artistic aspirations. Her father wouldn't let her. It's not what young ladies were supposed to do in those days. And she certainly didn't want to inflict that problem onto her 2 sons, David and myself. And so we were always encouraged to go to art museums and to make art, and art was considered a very positive thing in our family. My brother subsequently went on to art school and, in fact, is now quite a well-known artist working in London. And I actually also was originally, before I got sidetracked by Buddhism for 20 years, I was planning to become a photographer. That was my... as a teenager, I worked in photography, and I had my darkroom, and I did all of this stuff myself, and I loved doing that. But Buddhism kind of drew me in another direction, and as a Buddhist monk, this art was really just out of the picture. I mean, it was not really given any value at all. But when I came back to Europe, probably in the mid-80s or so, then I started recovering this obsession with art, largely through my brother in many ways, because that was his world. But towards the end of the 90s, I remember coming back on a train from London to where I was living in Devon, and I emptied out all my pockets of all of the detritus I just sort of accumulated over the course of that weekend. And for some reason, it struck me that this is not rubbish. This is just this is potential art. I could do something with this. I could transmute these things that would otherwise be thrown away and turn them into something that aspires to a certain beauty, that has another, to transfigure these raw materials into a collage. And ever since then, and that I know that date, it was July 1995, until now, which is nearly now 40 years later, I've been constantly producing collages as a kind of a counterpoint to my written work. And this again is also continues through my conversations with my brother and other artist friends. And like Anne, I feel that making art and appreciating art are completely integrated into what I call mindfulness or Buddhist practice or the Dharma or whatever. And again, I tend to be surprised that this is a somewhat minority view. I also find the same when I hang out with my brother's friends. Most of them have no interest whatsoever in mindfulness or Buddhism or anything. And yet I feel the two are very, very closely connected, extremely closely connected. They're both practices that you do, things you do without necessarily having a clear picture of where it's going.
I'm wondering, Stephen, if we might continue with you on that particular thread about people coming to the conference that's coming up and seeing the art. Do you have some hopes or aspirations for how people might be influenced by seeing your art?
No, I don't, actually. I'm glad to be able to display it, and I hope people enjoy it. But beyond that, I don't have any aspirations at all. I am glad, of course, that the conference is including art as part of the event. I think that is very important. I was also at the Amsterdam conference, and I recall that, again, did not just make it all science of the mind and all of these scientific studies and so on, but included this. But I still feel, not only in the mindfulness world, which I don't know so well, but certainly in the Buddhist world, that there's a kind of a suspicion amongst a lot of Buddhist practitioners that art is somehow a hobby, or it's something you do on the side, or it's a distraction even. And that I find that is something I would really like to challenge by showing my work, to actually put this on display, not to argue about it or try and persuade. If you're not persuaded by the art, you're not going to be persuaded by anything I say about the art. That's for sure.
But what's nice about it, what you said, Stephen, that it's a good counterweight to your writing, for instance, that it's connecting to people at a different level. So a conference, it's an intellectual business. People are presenting findings, discussing. It's all verbal, intellectual. And art is a very different mean of connecting. It's much more imaginative. It's much more, so it's inviting people to open up in a different way.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, exactly. What I love about art is that it brings in the imagination. And it also, like meditation, it also allows you to experience another way that life flows through you in an odd way. I mean, a daily meditation practice is a time in which I get in touch with certain parts of myself that I probably wouldn't pay much attention to if I weren't sitting on a cushion. And likewise with art, I get in touch with parts of my imagination. I get in touch with feelings, with intuitions, that I don't think I would perhaps engage were I not involved in another kind of process, another kind of practice. But I also find, particularly with the sort of art I do, is that it complements extraordinarily well the whole principle of mindfulness, which is basically paying closer attention to what's around you all the time, but you don't notice. So when I walk around the streets and wherever I go, I'm on the lookout for little scraps of paper and plastic and cloth and whatever people have thrown away. And although that is a necessary part of making the art itself, what it also does is it transforms my relationship to the environment in which I find myself, because I've trained myself to notice things that most people ignore, and I've come to appreciate. So I think it does, in fact, heighten one's sensibility to the physical world, which is again going somewhat in a different direction to mindfulness and meditation, which are quite introspective by definition. Art somehow enables me to apply that same quality of attention to the physical world, and at the same time also to take that experience and then transform it into something else. It's this transformative process that I think is so visceral and real in making art, whereas it's somewhat more abstract and somewhat impalpable often in the process of meditation. So it gives me something by which to measure my broad practice of the Dharma, of mindfulness, of awareness, through actual, concrete projects that end up producing something I can stick on my living room wall.
Beautifully said, Stephen. And I think what you've described is very much in alignment with mindfulness practice, that awareness and that deep experiencing of what's here right now. And for you, were there any particular hopes or aspirations you had for people who are encountering your art at the conference?
No, I think it's very nice to be there, the two of us, to have two artists or two kinds of works, because they communicate with one another, and it also opens up. So it provides a bigger space for people to experience and hopefully maybe get inspired to do their own thing and to I mean, you can be creative in a lot of ways, and people might be able to do more in that realm than they might think. So I hope it will be inviting in more than one way.
Thank you, Anne. And for those who are watching today's episode, I will have links to the conference and several other sites that we have mentioned here today, and a few others that we haven't. I want to thank our guest today, Anne SPECKENS. Anne, thank you so much for being here.
And you, it's been a pleasure.
And Stephen Batchelor. Stephen, thank you so much for being here as well.
It's been a delight, Ted. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the conference and getting what your reaction might be to our art.
Thank you so much for being here today on our exploration of art and mindfulness. I hope you can join us at the International Conference on Mindfulness, and I'll have a link to that in the description for this episode. And remember, every moment you have a choice. Just make it the best you can. And I'll see you next time on Mindfulness Voyage.